Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to honor the memory of Mark Rubel, founder of Pogo Studio and co-director of the Blackbird Academy. Mark was a brilliant educator, a passionate mentor, and loved by many in the audio community. He was an early guest on this podcast, and I'll include the link to that episode in the show notes. And Mark's contributions to the world of professional audio education have inspired generations of students. Among his many generosities, he would often connect me with potential guests for this podcast. And in this episode, Andy and I talk about him some. So I want to dedicate this episode to you, Mark. We miss you. This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Adam Audio, Isotope, Native Instruments, and Grace Design. You're hearing my voice right now through the Grace Design M201 Mark II mic preamp into the Empirical Labs EL8X distressor mixed through Isotope RX, Ozone, Neutron, and Nectar, all on Adam Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. It's a great way to help support this show, and we really appreciate it. Now, get ready to rock.
And then I thought, you are in a control room, for all intents and purposes, with one of your favorite bands. You should speak to them. And I said, hey, by the way, what are you guys doing? Haven't heard from you in a while. They said this. We're looking for somebody to mix our next record. And you never get it handed to you like that. And I literally put my hand up in the air and said, I'll do it. And I did.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Hey, rock stars. Yeah, you. I've got a secret to tell you. Want to know how I get a consistent sound mixing over 1,000 hours of recording studio rock stars? My secret is using Isotope, RX, Ozone, Neutron, Voice Enhancement Assistant, and Nectar to make sure every episode of this podcast sounds great. Right now, you are hearing RX Breath Control, D-Click, D-Clip, DS, Deplosive, Voice Denoise, Ozone Multiband Compression, Neutron EQ, VEA, and Limiting, all from Isotope. Use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off or pick up the new Trash Light along with many of the other free cool plugins over at isotope.com. Are you struggling to make your mixes sound professional? If your tracks feel weak, distant, or lack punch and clarity, I've got the perfect solution. My free course, Mix Master Bundle. This course will teach you how to achieve pro-level mixes from your home studio using free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. But these techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you use Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or another. If you're ready to make your best record ever, go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started now for free. Find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Howdy, rock stars. This is Lid Shaw, your host, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Andy Freeman, who got his hands on a console at age 12 and at age 21 got his first job in audio, recording and editing voiceover artists in Atlanta. In 2002, after a friend asked if he produced bands, Andy said, "What'd you say, Andy?"
I said, yes.
This was a lie.
Yes.
But he hasn't stopped producing and mixing bands since then, so I guess it was a good lie. Learning on the job at his own studio in Atlanta, he and his wife, Malie, moved to San Francisco in 2008, then to Los Angeles in 2015, then to Nashville in 2017. Man, we're not going to be quizzed on dates, will we?
No, but LA street names should come up in the conversation.
Okay, cool. Where he works out of a full tracking and mixing space in his house here in Nashville. Andy doesn't hear music in genre, preferring the idea that there are only two kinds of music, good and bad. That's kind of what I think too, man. There's good music and bad music.
Right on.
Consequently, he's been able to work with just about anyone. Jason Hawk Harris, Ace Monroe, Leanne Skoda, Isley, and lots of fun San Francisco bands you never heard of. He also made a lot of live recordings in his time rambling around the country in a mobile recording truck with Bay Area tone. That sounds like fun. They include Andrew W.K., Carney, The Bravery, The Sounds, Nico Case. Anyway, if there's a passion and determination, Andy wants to be involved.
I want to be involved.
Oh, and he likes real stuff, like real people in a real room playing real instruments while being really inspired by each other's presence. If you work with him, he will spend an awful lot of time talking about energy and flow and stuff like that.
Energy.
What about
flow.
crystals, rocks too, maybe?
Well, definitely rocks. I mean, that's
Okay.
what we're here to talk about.
Because he wants to know who you are as an artist. He'll use words like identity and impact and deliberate.
We do
And he-
trust falls in the studio before every session.
And he will frequently ask you why you're doing what you're doing when you could be doing something else.
Yes.
He believes in tube amps, consoles, tape machines, analog hardware, and doing it the hard way. He will make a record in Pro Tools, but he doesn't like it, and he refuses to learn how to program because, let's face it, everybody else can already do better that programming than he could anyway. He also doesn't like writing in the third person. He thinks it's weird. Importantly, to me, Andy teamed up with Mark Rubel in 2020 to create a GoFundMe page to help me save home studios in Music City,
Oh,
which
man.
we did. It was probably the greatest honor that I've ever received in music. So thanks, Andy.
Oh man, that is heartwarming. My absolute pleasure, Lidge. I mean, what you did when just defines the phrase "taking one for the team." All those 3 a.m. and the council. I was watching that stuff at home online, and the council like, "It's 3 a.m. Does anybody want to talk about this?" No, we'll do it next time.
Yeah.
It was, and here you are, just forging on, soldiering on. It's crazy.
Here we are, dude.
Respect, man.
Rockstars, please welcome Andy Freeman to Recording Studio Rockstars. Andy, my Mandy, are you ready to rock?
Yeah, and with that, absolutely.
So welcome to the show, dude. Let's definitely talk more about that. Let's circle back in a second. I want to make sure we still know who you are. So I gave an intro, which sounded uncannily like your bio. From your
Yeah,
website.
yeah. I can, matter of fact, we can pause and I can go write that and make it even longer if you want. If
You
that's-
know, length is,
let's
it's
move
how
on.
it's how you use your bio.
That's,
What can I say? How did you start out in recording, man? What got you interested in doing this stuff initially? You made a lot of great records. You had a lot of experiences in different cities, and
Yeah.
you came here to do very nice things for me, trying to help
Aw.
do very nice things for other people too. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. Again, my pleasure. Happy to do it. Would have felt weird if I didn't do it. What got me into recording was my dad is an amateur folk musician, an amateur in the best sense of the word, meaning he's good. And he always has been. He made a hammered dulcimer out of a kit when I was a little kid and has been playing hammered dulcimer and banjo and mandolin and all the folk instruments for basically my entire life.
How many strings on a hammered dulcimer? It's a lot, isn't it?
Oh man.
Isn't it like 3 strings
I've
for every
never thought
string? Or no?
Are they triple
or
coursed or double coursed? I actually don't know. Sorry, Dad. Anyway.
But it's basically like a a nice wooden harp looking thing, and then you hit it with almost like spoon-like wooden hammers with felt.
Yeah,
on the
they're
edge
kind
or
of
something.
rounded, and on one side they're hard, it's just the wood, and the other side there's felt.
Yeah.
And so it's a softer sound.
Oh, and you'd hit it with either side of the hammer.
Yeah.
Depending on
Depending on what
kind
you're
of thing
doing. One
going
is the wood side is this bright, sprightly, energetic kind of bell tone. And the felt side is this dark. Felt side is beautiful. It's this really dark, rounded, it's sort of like putting a tea towel over Ringo's snare drum,
Right. The wood side is for like bright daytime fairy gatherings in the woods.
Fairy gatherings and clearly you've met my father. Yeah.
And the felt side is, for after the dark, heavy rains when the moss is thick.
When the moss is thick. Yeah. Yeah. When the moss is thick. He made a record called When the Moss is Thick, which is kind of crazy. That you know that. Well researched, Lidge, as
Thanks,
always.
man. I try to do my homework. Not really though, but so that's cool. So you grew up with some cool sounds and cool music around the house.
Yeah, I grew up with someone who and my mom played piano, not to leave my wonderful mother out of things.
A different kind of hammer dulcimer.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, multiple coarse strings, hammers, the whole bit. And we used to drive, my dad and I used to drive around and go to, guitar shops and whatnot on Saturday afternoons when I was, 10, 11 years old. And we would listen to Atlanta's Z93, classic rock radio. And he would kind of point to the radio and say, "What's driving that song?" And it became a little game. If you're listening to I don't know, All Right Now by Free, which is one of the rockiest classic rock songs ever. If you take the kick drum pattern out of that song just falls apart. It just turns to ash. And every single song that came on, Dad would say, "What's driving that song?" And I'd have to identify it. And I didn't know it at the time, and I don't think he did either. But that was training me at a very young age to think about music structurally and to think about momentum and motion and dynamics and flow. And those are things I always think about when I'm producing a record, even mixing a record that I didn't produce, is how's this moving forward? How is this translating to the list? Is it causing people to get up and move? Is there momentum and flow here?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny just thinking about that and remembering growing up myself, some Suzuki lessons. But I do remember a music teacher in my grade school that did cool things like he'd drop a needle on the record and we'd have to try and pick out the instruments that were on it. And it's such a simple thing. I think it's a really common music class exercise, but what a great way to train your ear too and not even know that you're training your ear.
Yeah, and even more than that, knowing how to listen to records, knowing to listen, knowing to actively listen. We're in a place in society where music is, you're going to pull up a mood playlist. I don't think audio people do that very often, but and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to cast aspersions. If everybody was an active listener, they'd all be in the audio business and they'd be competition for you and me. So let's not go too far. But learning how to actively listen and pay attention to what's actually going down, what's coming out of the speakers. It's like I've got a book at home called "How to Look at a Painting."
Right
and,
on.
I read Mortimer Adler's "How to Read a Book." How to pay attention, how to be involved in these things, how to be active in whatever you're doing, and that's what those little quote unquote lessons with my dad were all about.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I like that idea of actively listening. I certainly do that a lot more now in music than I did when I started. It's funny how you can have records that are favorite records when you start becoming a fan of music, and then you come back and listen to them again later, and the simplicity and the elements are just so blatantly obvious to you later with the experienced ear, but the first time you heard it, you just didn't realize. You connected with some element in it that you loved, but it wasn't clear to you that the drums were that simple or that piano part just did that one thing there or that the guitar had that tone or whatever, You know how to identify it. And I remember the first time I listened to a record and thought, "Oh, this is different." In terms of the mixing and the balance of the whole thing, I was 14 and I'd been listening to The Police's "Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic" on Ghost in the Machine. That song is spectacular. Yeah.
Spectacular. And then all of a sudden one day, I'm 14 years old, and I had it on my Sony Walkman or whatever. And I said, "Whoa, that vocal is low. That vocal is real low." And it just got me thinking about records in a whole new way, more active listening, more what's going on here, more kind of like I wrote in my bio. I don't know if I'm allowed to address the rock stars directly, but
yes,
but I wrote that bio.
You're just not allowed to make eye contact. As long as you don't make eye contact with them.
All right. Yeah, my hand's over my eyes when I say this.
You just don't want to get bit.
Bit?
Yeah. You don't want to get bitten.
Are there? All right, I'm going to leave that where it lies. Yeah, I wrote that bio, rock stars. And just like I said in the bio, what did I say?
What did you say in the bio?
Yeah. What are you doing? Why are you doing it?
Right.
Why this? Like, we got to do something. Why that? Put some thought into it. I do want to be like Quincy Jones said, leave room for God to walk through the door. But we do need to, come correct, come to the table knowing what you're putting down, knowing what you want to do. With
leave
some
room
thought
for God
behind
to
it.
walk through the door, but at least get dressed for church before you show up. Is that kind of the thinking?
Well, yeah. Well, so many churches these days is like, we're dressed for church right now, but.
That's right. The church of rock and roll. And
of course, rock stars, I'm in a 3-piece suit right now. Lidge isn't, again, with the eye contact thing.
Yeah. The 3 pieces are shirt, jeans, and watch.
Hey, I wore a belt today because I thought this was special, okay?
Yeah, I'm wearing my rock star belt. Even though I'm vegan, I still have a leather belt because I already had one. And it's just the right one to wear all the time. I actually don't know where it came from.
Not an animal.
Well, that's cool. So then what about picking up instruments? Are you a guitar player? Are you anything else? Drums?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I definitely don't want to say that I'm a guitar player in Nashville. I mean, let's not bring.
I just beat you up on the last podcast episode talking about people who say I don't want to say I'm a guitar player.
I know everybody says that, but I mean, come on. I mean, we all think like, let's not bring tea to China, right?
China.
I mean,
let's not bring tea to Boston.
Let's not bring coal to Newcastle. I started playing guitar when I was 11 because, Dad picked out instruments for everyone in our family, and it stuck with me. And, I'm 44 now, and I've been playing guitar an awfully long time, but I know what I'm going to play, and I don't know what you're going to play. And so if I'm working on a record, I'll put guitar. I mean, if there's nobody else around, then I'll put my hand in the air and go, okay, yeah, I'll do it. That's fine. But I'd much rather hear somebody else. My whole story and my whole career is learning that I'd rather be listening. Again, guitar, bass, occasionally drums. I can do it if nobody else is around, or if it's going to cost a lot of money to hire somebody and it's a simple part, fine, I'll knock it out. It's not a big deal. Don't even put my name on the credits. I don't care. But I like listening more.
Hopefully, if I'm playing guitar, it's power chords and downstrokes only.
Yeah.
Precise.
Very limited.
Precise and carefully muted in between.
Yeah, if somebody hands me a pair of drumsticks and it's like, okay, it's in 7/4 and there's a bar of 9. And do you like Tool? I love Tool. All right, 2, 3, 4. I'm in a cold sweat,
Do you like fills, drum fills? No? Okay, good. You'll do just fine. So what about playing all the instruments? I mean, is that like, I feel like the story for me was once I started assembling a studio, that included assembling other instruments, and then I started learning how to play them.
Yeah, I should apply that to all the various pianos and keyboards that I own. That would help.
Have you accumulated
plenty
of instruments at this point?
I have a problem. Yeah, there's 30 some odd guitars and 25 tube amps and various little things like that. I don't know how many pedals.
What's an exciting new one for you?
An exciting new pedal?
Anything.
An exciting new anything. Because of Roger Allen Nichols, who I just had lunch with. He said
he was just sitting in your chair yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I can kind of tell. And we were having lunch, I don't know, a month ago, and he goes, "Man, you got to see this little thing." And he pulls out this little K amplifier from the early 60s.
Right. He was just talking about that.
Oh, was he talking about that?
Yeah,
okay.
so
well,
funny.
He goes, this is, wow, what a coincidence. And he said, yeah, there's one over. He told me a story. He's like, they have one available right now. And I left Roger's place and went and bought it.
That's awesome.
So I'm talking about the same thing he did, but it is the coolest little.
Was it at Rumble Seat? That was one of his favorite spots, I think. Isn't that what's called over in Berry Hill?
Oh yeah, no, not Rumble Seat. It was Paragon Mills, which is this great. Man, you got to go. It's this great little pawn shop right across from Plaza Mariachi on Nolensville.
I have heard about that.
And it has no business having the music selection that it does. But the guy really tries to, I forget his name, sorry. But the guy really tries to have a great selection of stuff. So it's almost like a guitar shop.
That's
But
cool.
yeah, you should check it out.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That stretch of road has had a lot of great guitar stores over the years too.
Oh, Nashville Used Music reminds me of my first job at age 15. I worked for Galaxy Music in Atlanta, Georgia. And, they taught me how to curse, tell dirty jokes. And I was a stock boy. I'm just moving the boxes around, but working at a guitar shop, I'm 15. I get an employee discount.
They teach you words like crud and dang it.
Crud and dang it. Let me get it right. It starts with an H. Heck. There it is. Yeah. Right.
All right. So you found your way into studios. I want to hear about this mobile recording stuff because it's funny. Mobile recording, sometimes we can look at it like, well, it's not really a studio and think about it like that. But honestly, all my mobile recording studios have informed my recording experiences so much, whether it was Bonnaroo or whether it was rolling around the country with my buddy in a little DAT machine set up in the back seat of our car and just recording people in all these different places. What did you guys do for your mobile recording? And what were some big learning lessons for you? Oh
man, yeah, this would be a 9-hour podcast if I told you all the lessons. But in general, I hear you on mobile recording because the pressure is amazing and pressure makes diamonds. And so the lessons that
especially if it's a live stage.
Yes,
thing, right?
Which it was with us.
But if it was not live stage, maybe the pressure isn't quite the same.
It isn't quite the same thing.
It's not the same pressure.
Yeah, well, there is sort of a, for want of a shoe kind of thing, or for want of a nail kind of thing.
run with the shoe for a minute.
The shoe, yeah. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost, which is an old saying, and it's also in a Tom Waits song.
For want of a shoe, Lidge ran barefoot.
Yeah, we use barefoot right now, rock stars. You have no idea.
Well, the weather's warming up. It's it's good barefoot weather. By the time you hear this, it'll be plenty warm, rock stars.
Yeah, thank you for rescuing me. There's a thing like no matter what you're doing in mobile, whether it's live or you're recording at somebody's house or a barn or a picturesque locale, you still have to make sure you bring everything because for want of a nail, the shoe was lost. If you don't bring this certain adapter, nothing works, right? I mean, there is that potential. So right off the bat, before the band steps on stage, there are 2 million ways something could go wrong. I have a drawer of adapters in my studio. You probably do too. We all should, but you got to make sure to bring them on the road.
Yeah.
Especially when there's no Guitar Center.
A drawer for all the drawers.
We did have a drawer of drawers. Lord of the drawers.
Keep your drawers on. Doing the Bonnaroo studio, we would have to, I was terrified that we get down there and be missing something. Yeah. And even for the first number of years, even despite all my efforts of trying to be ready, we'd still get down there and be missing something. Mm-hmm. But in order to prepare for it, we would do things like, take over the live room in my studio and set up the entire Bonnaroo studio as a dry run, separate from my control room. And I was even like, don't even set a cable aside or close to the wall, because then when we leave, pack up, we'll think that that's part of the, we don't need that one. It's like just these, you got to be so careful. And it's hard to do that, like to collect all this stuff, just because like, where do you even collect it? If it's close to other cables that you don't need to bring, how do you tell the difference?
Bring them all.
Bring them all.
That reminds me of one of the first times we did this. We were in New York for the now defunct CMJ Festival, and we were recording some bands for now defunct, this was a while ago, purevolume.com for my friend Josh Rowe. And I remember the guy who was running front of house, and they brought in this New York, union crew of guys, and they're setting up front of house, and I was setting up the recording rig, and we got to talking, and I said, how do you operate in high pressure situations like this where there's going to be 60 bands, And he said, I always tell myself and my guys that if you want to do it right, you got to do it twice. But we only have time to do it once. And I thought that's perfect.
Like sort of at the beginning, like the measure twice, cut once kind of thinking.
Yeah, set it up, realize what you got, get there early enough to set it up, realize what you got wrong, find the failure points, take it down, do it right the second time.
Right,
you know.
No matter what style of music you create, Native Instruments provides you all the instruments you need, from drums, loops, and beats to vintage and modern synthesizers, realistic strings, guitar amps, and futuristic synth pads. I really enjoy recording real bands in my studio, but then adding amazing overdubs from Contact, Massive X, Super 8, Battery, Guitar Rig, or Hybrid keys. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off or get complete start for free today with a bundle of 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples at nativeinstruments.com. Yeah, that would be a lot of stress, the live stage. I mean, again, for my Bonnaroo studio, it was 1 hour for 3 songs with the band. So there was slightly less pressure. You know, if we really messed up, we could start again. But also you just run out of time, so you'd miss it, and then you don't want to have to make people do stuff twice because the second time might not have that magic that the first time had either. When it comes to performances.
Yeah, those rules. I mean, in the back of my head the whole time when I'm recording a band, and all of our stuff was on stage, so it was in front of an audience mics, the whole bit, and. In the back of my head, I'm always thinking about what you read in, Behind the Glass or any of these books that we read coming up. And they're saying, always be ready to record something. Always, the first take might be the best. And I'm like trying to apply that to live recording in a concert and going, well, the bass player kicked the DI and now we don't have a DI for this song. So what are we going to do? It's a different set of rules. It's a different set of, coping mechanisms that you have to bring along in your own head.
Right. Plus there's that whole thing of redundancy. Like,
oh yeah,
you could do all this setup. You could make sure you brought all the right adapters. You could make sure that you and your team have successfully gotten a signal chain from every instrument and made it kick-proof even. But what happens if the computer just says, like, today I'm not recording?
Yeah.
What in your experience, what were some ways to deal with that?
Well, you plan ahead for as much redundancy as you can, A, afford financially, and B, have the space to carry with you. And we brought a lot of gear. So beyond testing all the cables beforehand, make sure they work and all the just basics, if you're out in the field, have that second computer ready to go and if anything goes wrong, know your equipment, know how to fix it, know where the failure points might be, even though they're tested. And also have a speech ready in your head to talk to a band and say, okay, we didn't afterwards to get a band in the truck. We had a truck and say, all right, well, actually we're missing this. In fact, that's how I got one of my coolest gigs ever with a band that I was a huge fan of was the band Isley. And I came up listening to their stuff as just a pure fan, 3 sisters and a brother and a cousin from Texas, Tyler, Texas. And they were playing, and I was all excited. I'm being a professional. This is at South by Southwest many years ago. And we had the truck parked behind the venue, and Isley gets on stage. And I knew they were playing to some very, very basic tracks, but the tracks were important. And for whatever reason, and who knows, because, blame doesn't matter at that point, the audience was hearing the tracks, but we weren't. And so I hunted them down out there, found them in the crowd, and they didn't know me from Adam's House Cat. And I said, hey, come back to the truck. I want to ask you a question. So they come back and they said, what is it? And I said, well, we got everything we're supposed to get, but I didn't get your tracks. However, I did print your click track. So if you can go back to the hotel or when you get back home or whatever, send me those tracks that you were playing to, and I'll fly them in for when we send this to YouTube. And they said, all right, yeah, sure. Thanks for, good looking out. And they did that. And then I thought, you are in a control room for all intents and purposes with one of your favorite bands. You should speak to them, moron. This is how my brain speaks to me. And I said, hey, by the way, what are you guys doing? Haven't heard from you in a while. And they said, oh, we're looking for somebody. They said this. We're looking for somebody to mix our next record. And you never get it handed to you like that. And I literally put my hand up in the air and said, I'll do it. And I did.
That's awesome.
I mean, just like asked and answered. I mean, we had to go through management and all this other stuff. And they were like, we'll send you one just for fun. Ha ha. But I did a good job.
Yeah.
And so you never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah. You know, a version of that for me was early on, I was working with Will Kimbrough and I had recorded him in the studio. And I was in the engineer position at a studio at Alex the Great. And there was, we were getting ready to record and do a session. And by default, I would have just been the engineer on the session for what was needed. Record would have just gone on, and done what it was going to do. And as we got closer, I got really inspired and I just started thinking I really want to step into the role of producer more. And I think I should just call Will and ask him and just like make the ask and say, I'd really like to produce this record. What do you think? And I did, and he was open to it. And it was really, really so much fun. I just loved it. For me, it made it so much fun to do the record because now I felt like I had permission to offer my creative input, on a level that was different than just pushing buttons and wondering what everybody wanted to do. And it was, co-production, but it was the same thing where it was like, you got to just ask for it sometimes. You got to just step up there and just say, I'd really like to do this. And it's funny how that's like all it takes. I mean, sure, you can get turned down.
Oh,
too.
Sure.
But when it works, it might take only that much effort,
It might, and knowing when to ask and knowing when to talk to people and knowing when to make your intentions known, there's a very, very small window for that in any sort of studio because the record is not about you. Mine, I do joke with all my clients and maybe I shouldn't say this because I'm going to say the joke again, but when we're always talking about record titles. Oh, what?
Do it.
Oh, we talk about record titles and I'll say, this record is going to be called Andy Freeman Presents, and then your name, but in a smaller font, and which is ridiculous, of course.
Right.
It's not
but
my
is it? But is it really?
But is it really?
But is it really? No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, actually, Lidge, let me help you out there. Yeah, it's really, no. I know you know. It's not my name on there, so the record's not about me, and that means that it's not about my intentions. But if there is an ask there, and you know your client well enough and can put them at ease and get it to a point where you're relating as two human beings, then there might be a chance. And it pays to know, number one, when that opportunity is, and number two, it pays to have the confidence to be able to walk through that door if you see it crack open just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're making such a valid point that the record's not about us, the engineer, the producer, the studio. It's about the artist and what they're going to go off and do with that music. Yet at the same time, we need to remember that we probably have a lot to offer. We probably got a lot of value to offer. And so being willing to speak up and just say something and suggest and offer is a kindness to the artist and the record. And if they are interested and they like, the connection, or they think you can offer something, great. If not, they can tell you no and just tell you the best way that you can help,
Yeah, and if you phrase it in such a way that you need to phrase it in such a way that if you get turned down, if the answer is no, that the rest of the session isn't weird.
Right.
You haven't shot yourself in the foot. And I will say that I have a mistake I made early on, and frankly, honestly, a lot later than I should have. In my career, I was still making this mistake. I would produce the record, but I would be looking at the next record. I wouldn't be focusing on the job that was right in front of me. I would be looking at the next one and thinking, boy, I hope I get that because there's going to be a budget on that one, or there's going to be more, or whatever. And I wasn't, to quote Aristotle, never his mind on where he was, what he was doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't
that the little green guy?
Aristotle was not green, Lidge. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know who I'm talking about.
Big ears.
So, yeah, that's great. I think the focus on not being distracted too. I mean, especially like back when there weren't cell phones in the studio and the internet wasn't connected to the studio computer and, Gmail wasn't calling your attention. There wasn't social media. It was, in some way, a lot of ways, it felt a lot easier to know that what I'm doing today in this studio with this band that's all I'm doing. Your head could still be thinking about the next project. I guess the big challenge for me sometimes was, a girlfriend calling and, my head being in that space while I was making a record, which wasn't necessarily helpful. But being able to be focused now, of course, we live in a time where everything's going bing and notifying you constantly. Yeah. And it can be very, very distracting. I remember the first time I got a cell phone and went down to the studio and I had upgraded and then it started going ding. And I was like, what the hell is that? And I looked over and it's an email coming in. I'm like, why in the hell would I want to know about an email that just came in?
And that question is just as relevant now as it was back then when we, put our chisels and paintbrushes down from drawing antelope on the walls of our caves and went to the Apple store and got an iPhone. That question is still, why would I want to know about this now? Is it important that I know about this now? No. Unless it's my wife. And then, it is.
Although, husbands and wives used to be able to contact each other without instant notification messages back in the day.
When we first got married, I remember the good old days of writing my wife a love letter, tying it to the leg of a pigeon and sending it off and saying, fly, little bird, and it would find her.
Poor pigeon.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the letters got shorter as the pigeon got older.
That's great, man. What a story. What are some ways now that you try and remain focused on a session and not be distracted? Have you found some things that are easy to practice?
For me, it's I've worked to cultivate an awareness of time on the one hand, and then on the other hand, not react to it. I want to bend the clock as much as I can, hanging on the wall of, I think her name was Miss McCullen, my high school physics teacher. Hanging on the wall was this little thing. I don't know if Einstein actually said this, but apparently, as the story goes, because some stories are too good to check, the little girl comes up to Albert Einstein and says, Mr. Einstein, can you explain relativity? And he said, well, if I'm spending an hour with a pretty girl, it feels like a minute. And if I'm sitting on a hot stove for a minute, it feels like an hour. That's relativity.
Interesting.
And I think that is metaphysically, spiritually true. And a recording studio is a great place to test that. So I have to be aware of the clock and what I'm doing and what's next and all of that. I have to be aware of it, but I can't be focused on it because I need to be focused on my client and I need to make believe, like Mr. Rogers. I need to enter the land of make believe and say, we don't have an hour. We have as much time as you want. And get them and get myself in that mindset of limitless creativity, even if I really know it's not limitless.
Yeah, I find that the trick is to be self-aware of the schedule that you really want the session to run on as the engineer, the producer, the studio owner. Because if you don't, you will do what I always did in the beginning, which is you'll wake up, you'll be in the studio, you'll, break too late to eat.
Yeah.
And then come back tired and sort of like a little over hungry and then eaten. And then you'll just work until you drop and then go to sleep. And you'll do that over and over again. You'll lose perspective. But in order to do things like I do now, where it's like, okay, I've got a time frame for what our work schedule is. I know that we need to eat at an appropriate time in the session. Things that help me are not making the client have to think about that too much.
Yeah.
But me always being 2 steps ahead where I'm like, hey guys, why don't we, I know you're not hungry right now, but how about we take some lunch orders or get an idea where we want to get food so that when it's in between takes, after you get this, the food will arrive at the right time.
Right.
One of the things about like eating on a session too, is you get a band in there. If you just ask like, hey, is anybody hungry? What do you guys want to do? Nobody will ever say anything unless if they're experienced, they might know like, yeah, this is a good time to decide on lunch. But otherwise, like, especially like indie bands, everybody's like, no, I'm good. Nobody wants to be the one who says they're hungry, like, I'm not going to be the one who needs to take a break.
Yeah, well, they don't want to eat
session.
because if they're young musicians, they're trying to remain skinny, and I gave that up years ago. But just like those cicadas that we're going to see this summer, they know it when it's 17 years and they come out of the ground. You got to know that Uber Eats takes an hour.
Do we have a big cicada summer coming up?
Yep.
We're right in when you're hearing this.
I mean, when the podcast gets released, it's happening right now.
It's happening right now.
Yeah.
Look out your window.
Yeah, there's two of them. There's two groups of cicadas that are on two different cycles.
Oh, we're doing a double one again?
We're doing a double one, and it's the first time since like 100 years or something.
Oh my God, it's gonna be chaos.
Yeah. Funny story, by the way, of mobile recording. I was in Arkansas making a record, and with this band, and I was making a record with a band. Who else would I be making a record with? And we were at this house, and it was 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, something like that. And we had two Marshall half-stack, a Mesa half-stack and a Marshall half-stack going full blast in the laundry room, which was separated from the outside by a screen door. And I thought it was so loud. I'm bringing hearing protection and all the rest of it, learned that lesson years ago. But I'm thinking, there's a screen door separating this from the outside. It's 4 in the morning. We're in a neighborhood. The police are going to be banging on the door with a flashlight. Like, we have seconds to live here. And a person who was assisting me at the time, Brad Bird, he said, who's from there, he was like, calm down. I said, no, the police are coming. Calm down. And then finally he said, Andy, go outside. And I said, all right, fine. So I walk outside while the dude is playing. And I stood on the opposite side of that screen door, and I couldn't hear anything but the cicadas. The Marshalls and the Mesas just got lost in all the cicadas.
The sound of cicadas.
Yeah.
I remember late 90s, the house I was renting was one of those years where we had double cicada years, and it was like a snowstorm of bugs in Nashville. And you'd drive down the street, and in the same way that snow would drift and you'd have like 2 tire lanes in the middle of the road from the snow parting, it was the same thing with just dead cicada bodies. It was crazy. And the volume was so loud, you'd have to roll up the window of your car, like you said, when you're driving around, because it would just
maybe
be
we
too
won't
much.
be checking mixes in the car, or maybe all our mixes will, for the next little period here will be, +6 at 2.5, and people will go, yeah, that was mixed during the cicada season.
There you go. It's like,
they all sound like that.
It's a lot of drone music.
So I thought it had been 100 years since a double cicada season.
No, we had a double one in
or
in
are
late
you
90s,
100 years old?
But this could be. So there is an episode with what's his name? Who's the guy, the astrophysicist who's always talking about Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
He was on Recording Studio Rockstars?
No, but that'd be kind of fun. I guess.
Yeah, man.
He did I forget what it was called, brain stuff, or one of those shows where like they're teaching math stuff and they're teaching the power of prime numbers, and he explained how all the cicadas are on prime number cycles, and it's so that they don't come out of the ground at the same time, because if they mate between each other, they don't reproduce. It's a very strange thing. And so like
they both come out of
but occasionally the prime numbers
Marty.
line up and they do come out at the same time. And so it's like, it's a crazy number of cicadas. I know this show isn't really about cicadas, but it is about sound, and that's a lot of sound.
That's a lot of sound, yeah.
So we should get out there with our little portable rigs and do some recording there.
I want to get a dB meter on it. And let me welcome the audience back after our 4 hours talking about cicadas.
So let me jump to this. I like to ask guests on the show to share an inspirational quote, or, talk about somebody in particular that maybe inspired them in the music. So do you have anything that comes to mind for you? Was there anybody that really inspired you in music, or I mean, you've already shared some great quotes. And by the way, that girl, I think it was probably like, she probably was trying to ask him like, can you explain relatives? And he just misheard her. And she just wanted to know why her cousin was being a jerk to her.
Yeah. Or she was looking for a dad.
Right.
That's a lot sadder now. Well, I guess I can't use that anymore.
No, I'm just kidding. All right. So what else? What else you got for us, man? Keep it coming.
Two quotes. One is one is from a guy I know, and another is from someone I don't. The first one from someone I don't know is Mahler, the composer, who said, I am beating.
He said, double that shit. Sorry.
He said, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, 17 milliseconds roll off the top end, pan it to the other side. That was Eddie Van Halen. So one quote is from Mahler, the composer, and he said, I am beating my head against the walls, but the walls are giving way. And we live in a time where it's a very technological, scientific age where we want to be smarter than the average bear, more clever. We want to find a way technologically to get around our problems. And that's fine. That can be fine. I'm not casting any aspersions on that necessarily. But Mahler would tell you something that I think is just as true, which is sometimes the only way out is through. And sometimes we are focused on working smarter, but sometimes we have to work harder.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, an example that would immediately come to mind for me are all the automated tools that we have, the beat detectives, the auto tunes, and things like that. And a lot of times the real solution, or like triggering samples against drums,
Yeah.
But often the solution is, you just got to zoom in and do the edit manually. And it's going to go a little bit slow, but you got to be quick at doing it. And you got to, power through straight up the middle or whatever.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would agree. And, I'm very interested in having my clients come out of a studio experience with me being better. I want to make music better. And the way that I can do that is helping people grow in the studio. It's like a little greenhouse, and if I'm sitting there editing everything and perfecting everybody's performances, then that band is not getting any better. And my favorite days are when a band does a take and then they all come out and they have surprised themselves with how well they played. And they're all, the hair on their arms is standing up and they're going, oh my God, we got it. Man, that's the best we've ever,
Yeah.
And they leave the studio as a better band, a better artist because of that experience. If I sit there and edit everything at the computer with a mouse and keyboard, not only am I giving myself carpal tunnel syndrome in slow motion, I am taking away their opportunity for growth. So it's up to me to move my butt, walk in the room and say, we need to do it again. Here's some things you can fix. Let's pay attention to the kick drum pattern. Okay, your drummer, your hi-hat hand is ahead of your kick drum hand, your kick drum foot.
I like kick drum hands.
Yeah, and it's flamming or whatever, and pointing out these little things, and they walk out of there having A, something to work on, and B, having more confidence, knowing that they can get there, they can get to the next level.
Adam Audio celebrates 25 years of designing industry-leading monitors in Berlin by unveiling the Arctic White A4V and A7V monitors, available for a limited time. With the XART ribbon tweeter design, customizable speaker voicings, and SonarWorks integration for room correction, these monitors deliver professional-grade sound perfect for Grammy-winning producers and home studios. Make your studio cooler than cool with the Arctic White A4V and A7V, available for a limited time with the standard extended 5-year warranty at adamaudio.com. So I remember doing a session on the Roscoe Gordon record, A Night in Rio, with Mickey Grimm, and we wanted to put some drums down against this kind of funky, South American track, and against the guitar, and so at first it was like I think we tried doing kick and snare as a drum kit, and then it was like, let's just do the kick and then we'll add the snare, and he just played them by hand. So it was a kick hand. And my takeaway immediately when we did that was like, it was the slinkiest, most rubber band drum groove. It was really cool.
That's cool.
So that just reminded me of that. And I would encourage you rock stars to experiment at times with, what if this drum part isn't played on a drum kit, but is played with a kick hand, followed by a snare hand, followed by a hi-hat hand?
I just saw this, but there is an NPR Tiny Desk concert from a couple of years ago with Pedrito Martinez, and he is, doing this, Afro-Cuban thing, just fantastic. The congas, and he's playing them like nobody's business. It's sort of this Tiny Desk concert. I don't know the names of the songs. I don't know anything like that, but it sounds to me as if the band Yes formed in Havana instead of England. It's crazy. Like, it's Cuban music, but here's a bar of 7.
Nice.
It's wild, wild stuff. Amazing stuff. And he has a hand snare and a hand kick. And in the middle of this, Cuban music, he will, timba specifically, he will drop this, straight out of Compton, 808, hitting a kick drum that sounds like an 808 and a snare with his hand. And it's the baddest thing ever. It is so cool. He only does it kind of here and there, but when he does it, it just gives you chills. It's amazing.
So,
I hope I get a chance to
the
work with him
kick
someday.
can have that deep bass resonant sound.
Yeah. I'm not going to try to sing a Cuban rhythm on a podcast. That would be ridiculous.
Well,
but
we had, by the time this comes out, we will have had John Arucci on the show, and he talked about doing, various beats from around the world, which was really fun to get into.
It's great. I've been spending a little bit of time in Havana, and the music is in the blood.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great.
So rewinding a moment, you brought up Mahler and had this quote from Mahler. I jokingly said, let's double that shit. So Mahler, to my limited knowledge, was known for reinforcing different sections of the instruments and doubling up on it to make lines really powerfully cut through, especially horns.
There are power chords in that stuff.
Yeah. And it's
the original metal.
It is kind of the original doubling.
Yeah.
And one of the records in your discography, which we have in the show notes, Rockstar, so you can scroll down, click through, go over to Andy's, I think, Instagram page we have there.
Yeah.
And then also go listen to some of these great records he's done. Maybe we'll have that Andrew WK video.
Oh,
too.
my
You sent a
gosh.
link to that. But the Rocket Boys, it's a great example of double vocals in the chorus. And so what do you want to say about doubling vocals and the power of doubling up on instrumentation in the studio?
Doubling vocals is very interesting because it can, depending on who's doing it, it can either add or subtract from the intimacy of the lyric. No one would argue that Elliott Smith doubling vocals was a bad thing. And it gives you more of the lyric. When Elliott Smith, who's a genius, and more people should listen to Elliott Smith, I'm a little concerned that his influence is being lost, and there's just so much music there. It's amazing. But when he doubled his vocals, even loosely, you got more of a sense of the lyric. You could hear the words better. It's almost a practical thing that he did. But sometimes if you have somebody like Marilyn Manson doubling a vocal, then it makes it sound more alien and more distant. So it depends on who's doing it. I think when Brandon doubled his vocals on that record, it's and when he does it in his solo work with The Wealthy West, it creates width and size. It's important to think about what is being communicated to the listener at all times. Even with something as sometimes something as automatic as a vocal doubling, is this hindering or hamstringing what I'm trying to communicate?
Hamstringing. I like the idea of hamstring too. Is it hamstring? Is it hamstringing? If it's hamstring what you're trying to do, then that means it's getting the wheel to spin faster.
It was hamstered. No, Brandon was on a little wheel, and I had to isotope RX all the little spinning sounds out of there.
No, this
was
just cicadas in the background.
Yes, what, this is one of the weirdest conversations I've had in a while.
It gets weirder.
And that says something.
We're only in the middle. So with when you're in the engineer's seat and you're helping an artist to double out on the vocal mic, is that tricky to do? And have you learned any methods for helping the artist do that successfully?
Doubling?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some come in. A lot of people are recording at home now. We're in something. I don't know if you know this. We're in something called the home studio revolution.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah,
Why is it a revolution?
About 6 months old. Why is it a revolution? Yeah, I think a lot of people who have been guests on this podcast would need hard alcohol in front of them before they would talk about this. But I kind of would too. But everybody has, every band, every artist knows a little bit about how to record themselves. This was not true when I was starting out in 2000. Because they know how to record themselves, they know what doubling is. Nobody is going to, it used to be like, oh, you can do that? You can sing again? Whoa. I mean, even in 2000. Now everybody knows how to do it. And so they come in with varying degrees of skill in being able to do it.
Yeah.
So the conversation really is never, can you do this? It's more, should we? That having been said, I have worked with some artists recently that do a tighter double when they're not hearing the original, which is bizarre to me, but hey, great.
Yeah.
And that could be a good tip to pass along too, is be asked, it's up to, let me start again.
Kind of depends on the vocalist and the lyric and the song, right?
It depends on the vocalist and the lyric and the song, and it depends on the engineer being able to be aware of what the talent is hearing in the headphones. Talent, that's an old voiceover term, sorry. What the singer's hearing in the headphones, and say, okay, do you need me to take out the other vocal? Do you want to hear your other vocal? Do you need a little reverb? Do you need a little delay? I worked with somebody who needed some chorus in their headphones to hit the pitch. Great, fine. Whatever you need. But not just setting it up and walking away, but saying, do you have what you need to do a good job?
Yeah. I know when I'm recording myself doing doubles, it's so great to have, Pro Tools control at my fingertips where I can just like play a thing, record it, listen to it, do it again, until I get it right kind of stuff. And when I'm engineering for somebody else and there's that separation between control room and the microphone, it gets a little tricky because I feel like you kind of have to work really fast because we got this goldfish memory on like, how did that vocal just go? And I'm going to try and copy that now with the double. And sometimes I'll tell a singer like, hey, let's get into a flow where like I play it for you once and then I don't even say anything. We just go right into record and you sing it. And maybe it's like, let's do it again, or whatever. But I also don't want to talk too much on the talkback because it's like, it's such a disruptor. Communication can be so disrupting in the studio. Breaking
in their head. Oh my gosh. Checking the level of the talkback so that when I hit the talkback, it doesn't kill them.
Yeah.
Little stuff like that it's all about just like driving around with dad, listening to records. What's driving that song? It's all about energy. It's all about flow. And, a pox be on me if I throw a speed bump in the way of an artist traveling at 90 miles an hour down the highway. It's my fault if I do that. It's not their fault. It's my fault.
Right. And it helps for me getting out there to do the recording myself because then I've found myself like with a guitar in my hand, ready to play the part right. And maybe, an intern or an assistant, somebody else was on the engineer side of things and talking to me on the talkback. And like, I realized quickly, I was like, wow, I can get derailed so easily. Like all I need to happen is I need the track to be rolling and in record because I'm trying to hold on to how I'm going to play that first E chord and hit it just right, And it's like, and if somebody talks to me and they like have this mini conversation through the talkback, I'm like, oh my God, what was I doing? I didn't even know what I was doing now. Now we're just having a conversation.
Yeah, and the moment can get shattered. It's so delicate. Have you seen the Pixar movie Soul?
I think so. Yeah, that was with the
piano player.
Yeah, was it like a dead piano player or something like that?
The dead piano player movie. That was the original title, I think. Somebody at Pixar's like, let's spend 5 more minutes on that. That is, I don't remember too much about the movie. I remember liking it, but when the piano player is in the flow playing jazz, it is the absolute best visual representation of that I have ever seen in my life. And I'm not in that. That's not my job to be there. But it is my job to clear the way so an artist can get there.
Right. When you're engineering, you mean?
When I'm engineering, when I'm producing in particular, It's my job to, as much as I can, clear the way for them to get there and lift them up to that place as much as it's within my power.
So immediately talk about the things that come to mind that have helped you clear the way for an artist. Let's get specific. It's stuff that pops into your head. Like, what have you done on a session recently that cleared the way for somebody?
Well, all this is under the umbrella of complete and total awareness on my part of every little thing that's going on at every minute of every day. That's a producer's job, to not have a memory of a goldfish. The artist can, that's fine, but I can't. I can't afford that. So when an artist gets in the booth, or in my case, the live room, do I dim the lights? Do you want reverb? We already talked about a little bit of it.
Did we set up the vocal chain the same as last time so we have a match?
Yeah, I mean, can I get it? Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen because I take notes and things like that. But how about, are there any change? The last song we did, singer singing at the top of her lungs, maybe this one's a lot softer. What changes do we need to make to get the level right and get the compression right in the headphones so they feel like they're just hearing themselves in the room? Do they need to take an ear off? Do they need to put an ear on? Do they want a little click? Do they not want a little click? 1,000 different things can happen, and being able to read a singer and know when they're comfortable is very important, because it's like, okay, we're relaxed, we're in the stream, now we can work.
Right. It's interesting, like thinking of the things that we can do or say to help somebody when they're out in the other room, they're playing a guitar, they're singing or doing whatever. It's a little bit, producing and engineering sometimes is a little bit like being an expert bike rider, and who you're working with today, they might be a great bike rider, but you might have to go teach them how to ride a bike a little bit before they can do it on their own. Because it's like things that you need to do to sing well on a microphone, taking an ear off and things like that. Ultimately, they're really just techniques that it should be part of your skill set as a singer, but you just might not know it yet in the studio. We become like this liaison to, help
liaison.
the guide.
I like that. Yeah.
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 I'm not trying to cast aspersions here. I just want to throw that in a third time on this podcast.
What? Aspersions?
Cast aspersions.
Cast aspersions.
Yeah. I like hearing all these first time terminology that comes on the show. It's great.
I use words good. I've worked with I was doing a lot of gospel R&B there for a while, a few years ago, and somebody like a Jill Scott or a Kim Burrell comes in the studio, and they know what they want, they know how they want it, they've done it 10 million times, they've recorded more vocals than I have, and they want this, and this. That's my comfort zone. Make it happen.
Right.
Boom, and do it. If somebody knows themselves that well, just do it and get them in their happy place. They know what it is, and then off to the races.
Yeah.
But if it's a younger artist, if it's a less experienced artist, and that's a lot of artists, then you have to be aware again and know what it is they're lacking, what it is they might need to get them there, what you think will work for them that may not work for somebody else, because one size never fits all.
Yep.
The awareness really, really pays off, and having a relationship and a freedom of, a freedom of relationship between you and the artist, freedom to be able to suggest things and to throw out ideas and to ask pointed questions is really, really helpful in that moment. They know that I care when I say, what do you need?
Yeah.
Or suggest, maybe you need this.
Right, because you need to know how to help them know what they might not know that they didn't know yet.
Yes, I like less than half of you, half as much as you deserve. Taking them, part of it is, like one thing that's really leaping to mind, and I want to go back and say this because it doesn't often get thought about. When the singer's in there, in the fish tank on the other side of the glass, does the band need to be listening in the control room, or do I need to chase them out? Does this person need private alone time to get in the flow? Maybe it helps.
Or do they need the team cheering?
Do they need the team? Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. Yeah. Do they need the team cheering them on? Or is one guy in the band going to be like, I don't know, make him go back and do that other thing? That's not helpful. We'll do that later. If it needs to go back, if we need to go over it, we will. But in the moment, a friend of mine, who great podcast guest, Matt Goldman, he used to have a line. He taught me a lot coming up. He used to have a line when somebody would get on his case about, do this, do that. Oh, he would turn around and he would say, how about when I ask you what you think of this, you tell me what you think of this? Like patience.
I am really impressed with Isotope Ozone. I've been mastering many of my records recently, and Ozone makes it so easy to get a fantastic sound. The built-in mastering assistant helps by analyzing the mix and suggesting all the settings needed for a professionally mastered result based on the genre and EQ curve of your choice. You can even reference a specific song if you want, using simple yet sophisticated modules like clarity, impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting. You just adjust the settings to your taste and it sounds incredible. And the magic of master rebalance means you can manipulate the level of the vocal, bass, and drums even at the mastering stage. Amazing. My bandmates are pretty demanding, but now when I send off the masters for approval, they absolutely love the way our records sound thanks to Isotope. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Ozone or other tools like RX and Voice Enhancement Assistant, or grab any of the cool free plugins like the new Trash Lite at isotope.com. What do songwriters, music producers, DJs, EDM artists, TV and film composers all have in common with you and me? We all need amazing sounds that instantly elevate our music to the desired style. That's why Native Instruments is your ultimate toolkit, offering a massive library of sounds for your studio. Whether you're into hip-hop, indie pop, classic rock, meditation music, dance beats, or orchestral arrangements, the Native Instruments Complete Bundle has it all. From drums, loops, and beats to synths, realistic strings, vintage bass, guitars, and keys, it's a comprehensive collection. I love recording real bands in my studio, but then enhancing the tracks with drum samples, synths, and futuristic keys from Battery, Contact, Massive X, Guitar Rig, and Hybrid keys, for example. It's a surefire way to make your productions sound modern and unique. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off, or get Complete Start for free today, featuring 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples at nativeinstruments.com. Howdy, rock stars. We're back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show. My guest today is Andy Freeman, joining us here at Podzilla.
I should go back to my voiceover. In a world where the music industry is falling apart before our very eyes, Lid Shaw is the recording studio rock star fighting Podzilla, Mothra, coming at you from 7.1.2 different directions all at the same time.
You ready to jam?
Apparently.
All right. Let's go back to that. Let's talk about fighting.
That was ridiculous.
You started to talk about it in the very beginning. Again, just a huge, massive thank you to you, man. I was such an honor that you and Mark Rubel, another fantastic individual, who...
If we could just... Mark Rubel, books will be written, songs will be sung. Mark Rubel is I've always referred to him when I talk about him to other people, just as the central switchboard of the Nashville engineering scene. He knows everybody, and he is loved by everybody.
Yeah.
How many people is that true of? I mean, really. He, not a bad word could be said, and he is genuine and authentic and warm.
Yeah.
And
so he's just a real lover of music and recorded music and keeping all the threads together.
And he's a lover of people.
So you guys did this wonderful thing.
Love you, Mark.
as I was mentioning, in 2020, when I was 5 years into fighting to save home studios, my own in particular, and everybody else's in Nashville, you guys showed a gesture of support and created a GoFundMe page and raised some helpful funding, which was just really appreciated. And it worked. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. And I took that and I put it immediately into the studio. So, as we were down there looking at the new setup with the speakers and everything like that, the Carl Tatz design,
that's beautiful.
That one was part of the help for going into that. So thank you so much, man.
Oh, you are more than welcome, Lidge. I only wish I could have done more. What you did for the scene, it just, so many towns. We're talking about cities. We're talking about development. We're talking about modern life. And I saw this happen in San Francisco, where I lived for a really long time. The thing that made San Francisco cool has been swallowed up by gentrification, development, call it what you want. It's been going on for years. This isn't anything new. At the corner of Haight and Ashbury, you want to see Jerry Garcia sitting there,
right,
playing a guitar and, with a missing finger and all the rest of it. But there's a Ben and Jerry's,
right,
which is sort of appropriate when you think about it.
Jerry.
But yeah, different Jerry.
Different Jerry.
Yeah, sort of. But anyway, these things that make towns cool get swallowed up by money. And I go so far as to say greed. And the town and eventually you turn around, like in San Francisco, and you say, why did everybody want to come here in the first place? This is, beautiful weather and all sorts of reasons, but when it comes to the art scene that used to be thriving, it's not what it once was. And so when I see somebody who wants to fight for music in Music City, not only does it strike me as ridiculous that the fighting has to be done, for starters, it makes me want to join the cause. And if I can't join the cause, then I want to do whatever I can to, again, just like production, clear the way for people to do it.
So I like to ask, just because I really like hearing other people's perspective, for the rock stars that don't know quite what we're talking about, what was the issue that we were trying to take care of? To your knowledge.
To my knowledge, I mean, obviously you have more knowledge about this. You were the front lines, but to my knowledge, we were unable to operate home studios in Music City. I'm going to repeat that. We were unable to operate home studios in Music City. The threat was that they were going to come and shut us down and take, Lidge, you were living under the threat of them taking all your gear.
Yeah, I had the cease and desist letter from the city saying you couldn't operate a home or commercial, calling it commercial because it was just work. It was my work, doing it professionally, a home studio. And the one of the big issues was just simply you could find a way to work from home as long as you were by yourself and never had anybody come over. It's like, well, what's the point of having microphones if you can't have a musician sitting in front of them,
Yeah, I'd just be making records of my own music, which, trust me, nobody wants to hear.
It's not always enough to sustain the biz.
Not exactly.
So you heard about this as somebody here coming to Nashville to do the studio thing too. And I think a lot of people did. What do you remember about that? What was your feeling when you heard about this thing going on?
My feeling was, well, first of all, my father, the hammer dulcimer player, is, he's retired now, but he was a lawyer. So I kind of grew up with that brain and I saw that and I read about it and I heard from you and I thought, okay, well, this is real. This is not going away. And what's funny about it is that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but what's funny about it is that this had always been true. And yet it was one of those weird things that we have now, which is you're not allowed to do this, but we may or may not enforce it.
Right.
And
don't ask, don't tell policy.
Don't ask, don't tell. Which
if that was a kind, forgiving statement to make about it.
Yeah. So we're going to be benign and not care about it until we do. And then we're going to come down on your head like a ton of bricks. And that's no way to run a railroad, because we've already talked about how much focus this job requires, producing records. I cannot produce an artist if I am waiting for a knock at the door from the fuzz. I can't be looking over my shoulder all the time when I'm trying to get a good vocal performance out of somebody who's talking about the death of their mother or something like that. This deep emotional moment, and then you're going to knock at the door. We're going to need you to shut it down.
Right. We don't like you today for some reason.
We don't. Yeah. Your name came up in the raffle, and it's your turn. You can't work like that.
Yeah. And on top of that, the concept of a don't ask, don't tell policy. I looked at it and I was like, wait a minute. So you're saying that I'm welcome to move to Music City, pay for college here, go to school, buy a home, invest my career and everything I've ever earned into trying to build up a thriving home studio to participate in a local music scene and economy, and, let's be honest, improve the neighborhood and help, be part of the reason why neighborhoods gentrify, because the artists make the place nice. And then people are like, well, that looks like a nice place to be. Look at there's all these artists and musicians. I want to move there. To do all that with this idea that like at any point in time, the city could just come along and pull the rug out from under your feet.
Yeah, in music,
bullshit.
In Music City, that's like taking gambling out of Vegas all of a sudden.
Yeah,
effective immediately.
Or like you're allowed to gamble, but unless we don't like what you're doing.
Yeah,
that will pull us.
Yeah, coming into the Bellagio with a big team of, I saw this. My San Francisco experience really informed this, because it started happening a lot. I know Bottom of the Hill, great little club on the south side of San Francisco, still in the city, but I've even played there, which is crazy. It's rare that I've ever been on stage, but I was on stage there. And they had complaints from the neighbors all of a sudden. Well, Bottom of the Hill was there first, and right. They're still alive. They're okay. Slim's, great, big, larger club that Boss Skaggs was involved in. I think he founded it, or at least invested heavily in it at its creation. All the neighbors moved into that neighborhood. All the tech people moved in, and they said, it's too loud.
Right.
Well, yeah,
that happened in Nashville,
you moved
too.
in to next door to a rock club that's been there for decades. What do you think it's going to be, genius?
Yeah. Same thing happened in Nashville.
And they're gone.
The Sunshine Pizza place was down near Vanderbilt area, and it was a great venue. It wasn't around for ages and ages, but it was around for plenty of time. And that little stretch of road had various clubs, and they had both indoor and an outdoor, stage with outdoor seating for pizza and people going, and everybody was loving it. And then they built condos across the street because the area is popping.
Mm-hmm.
And then the condos, sued the place and shut it down or something because there was music going on, and they're like, we can't sleep in our condo.
I'm all for growth and development and, progress, and, that's how time works. But people, I think in general, myself included, we can't come in to any new situation and change it and bend it to our will. I think it's funny that in modern life, we're used to doing that on the internet.
Sort of like producing a record. You can't just show up and try and bend the record into your
your
vision for production, right?
Well, getting back to that, if it's all right, getting back to that is the most important thing I learned in my first audio job doing voiceover engineering for on-hold advertising for banks. We would sit there and it was hilarious. This is very early. This is 2000, 2001. And we were recording into we were digital. Yay. We were recording into a 4-bit recording program called Bitworks that ran on a little PCI card in a PC, not a Mac. And it would record in DOS. So
awesome.
The first time I ever edited audio on a computer was in DOS with little green blocks.
Wow.
It was really something. Obscure key commands. It was like hieroglyphics. It was so bizarre. But the person I was working for, who was a neighbor of mine growing up, Barbara Hawkins, this is in Atlanta. She's a theater director, and she was also a voiceover artist herself, very talented. She taught me that when a voiceover artist, when the talent is in, we call them the talent. When the talent's, is the talent here yet? Yeah, they just got here. When the talent's in the booth, don't give them a line reading ever. Meaning, they have to read these things. They have to read, you know, I don't know, Sunday, WWE Wrestling presents SmackDown. Don't say, hey, can you read it like this? Sunday, WWE Wrestling presents SmackDown. That's doing their job for them, and that's telling them what to do, and it is getting in the way of what they're bringing to the table. So never give them a line reading, ever. I mean, in the most dire of circumstances, fine, but it only happened like twice in a couple of years, ever. And what that taught me to do is to like circumnavigate the issue at hand, to talk about the thing that we're trying to do. And it's a pet peeve of mine when a producer, and you know, sometimes I would engineer for other people. I'd see a producer sitting in the studio, and the talent would come in the door, the artist would come in the door, and the producer would immediately say, okay, here's what I'm going to need. It's like, no, this is a human being. They're bringing something to the table, and you are heading them off with your idea of what you think needs to happen. And I acquired a vocabulary over years of doing this to learn how to describe what I'm looking for without giving them a line reading, without doing it myself. Here, give me the guitar, I'll play it. You know, that maybe happens once a year, maybe, at this point. And I always found that I'm so grateful to Barbara Hawkins for teaching me that. It's meant so much, and I think it's made for better records and better experiences in the studio for me to honor the artist and say, what do you want to do? Let's get you where you need to be.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I've learned that lesson at different times in different ways too. And it really is, there's so much great stuff that the people you're working with are going to instinctively bring to music and recording. And there are those times where sometimes you're hearing a possibility and they just didn't hear it yet. So you find yourself like, how do I communicate this to them? And, you know, I've certainly picked up a guitar, picked up, you know, a keyboard to try and show it. But I agree with you. If you can find ways to describe it where it doesn't turn into like too much talking on the talkback, you know?
Yeah.
But you're just saying like, I think if it's more staccato, it'd be interesting to hear what that version is like. Or I'll describe like, what would this sound like if you get more into the character? You just say it like that.
Oh, that's a great one. What character are you playing here? Well, I want to be me. I know, but what facet of you do you want? Yeah, Leanne Skoda, who is she's just magic. Her voice, she's one of these people who'd ask, what mic did you put on her? It sounds great. It's like, I don't know. And furthermore, I don't care. She sounds great on everything. You know, it doesn't matter. She sounds like herself. And we were working on a song together, doing the vocal, and she's incredibly accurate. Her pitch is perfect, you know, but the vibe wasn't quite right. And she just had to find this character, and it was the slightest little, it wasn't even a character. It was just, she remembered herself in a situation, I think it was, and what she said to one person. And then instantly the next take was the keeper. Yeah. You know, just finding that one little place. It's so delicate, but once you're there, you're there. Yeah.
I think about lessons that I learned trying to coach kids on doing spoken word poetry recording in schools. And I would suggest that they had written this thing, but if they could for a moment find a way to separate themselves from what they had written and say, what if somebody handed this to me and it was a script and now I was an actor on stage and I'm going to perform this script and like find a character in it.
Oh man.
Kind of an interesting way to think about it, you know? And it does help sometimes. Yeah. Like, because sometimes you feel so close to what you're about to do. You're almost afraid of it, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, interpretation. I mean, why do we watch movies of or go to a play? I mean, I don't think nobody talks about Romeo and Juliet and says, okay, spoiler alert. You know, we know how it ends, so that must mean that the magic is somewhere else. We're not going to Shakespeare to get new information. We know the stories.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So we're into the shades and the colors that people put on it while they're doing it.
Yeah. Especially if we're doing music in all these genres, you know, you've got rock records, you've got pop records, you've got acoustic things that might be Americana leaning or whatever. It's sort of like knowing how Romeo and Juliet goes. You hear these things, and we kind of already are familiar with a genre and a sound, and this is how a band goes together. But you're right; it's the way that we find a unique or just a personal interpretation of it.
Yeah.
A character interpretation of it that can make it interesting.
And there's so much revivalism going on in music. There's so much. I had such a refreshing conversation recently with the artist Thad Cockrell.
That's great, yeah.
We were talking about all the revivalism happening in music and all the, I used to joke with friends like, oh, that record, they want to sound like the Beach Boys so much that it sounds like I'm listening to the reverb returns from Pet Sounds,
Right.
And Thad said, yeah, it's like robbing a bank. What are you putting in? Just being able to, what are you going to do? I mean, the treasure is we've done it. We've heard it all. I mean, this is modern life, Spotify, Apple Music, streaming. It's all at your fingertips. If I put in LE in Spotify, Led Zeppelin will come up and I can listen to any song of theirs in a split second. What are you doing that's new?
Adam Audio is celebrating 25 years of researching, developing, and manufacturing industry-leading monitoring solutions in Berlin. To mark this milestone, our friends at Adam Audio are unveiling a special limited edition series of monitors that will look stunning in your studio and sound as awesome as your music. Introducing the Arctic White A4V and A7V series. Available for a limited time to pro and home studio owners like yourself, the clean, glossy white finish exudes a luxurious feel and will stand out in any studio or home audio system. Featuring the XART accelerated ribbon tweeter design and customizable speaker voicings, the Arctic White A4V and A7V retain the full specifications of the original design. Plus, with SonarWorks integration for automated room correction, you can fine-tune your monitors to your control room's acoustics. Adam Audio's commitment to delivering professional-grade, high-fidelity sound to studios worldwide has made these monitors a perfect fit for Grammy-winning producers in both pro and home studios for a quarter of a century. Now you can bring that beautiful high-fidelity sound to your own productions and make your studio look as cool as your music sounds. Don't miss out on the limited edition Arctic White A4V and A7V monitors, available for a short time with the standard extended 5-year warranty at adamaudio.com. Well, I mean, it's a fair question, and I don't know that there's I'm not sure exactly what the answer is other than it's fun to think about revivalism in music and what we're doing, creating, producing, writing, in terms of expanding your palette of vocabulary, like musical vocabulary, record-making vocabulary. Like, it's cool not to discourage somebody from going and listening to the Beach Boys.
Oh no, by all means.
Dig in the vocal stacking and the reverb. But a good way is to do it is potentially to say, like, okay, this could be like a part of my vocabulary. Let me play around with that sound and see what of that kind of works with me and my voice, and then assemble these different things together and make music that's hopefully original just through an eclectic vocabulary of sounds.
And you have to be able to have your own self-confidence about what it is you're doing in order to not just regurgitate your influences. You can have all these things, you can listen to music, you can feed yourself good musical food, but it's like the cover of Dark Side of the Moon. You are the prism. These things have to be reflected through your own personality. And, the treasure is no longer in the mines, it's in the miners. We know what we're digging for. How are you digging for it? That interests me. You are different than everybody else in the world. The shading and emotion and the things you're going to think about are unique and inspiring. And I want to hear your opinion. I want to hear what you have to say. I might be the last guy left that likes surprises, But that's where good music comes from, is when an artist comes into their own as a fully realized 3D human being.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that quote. Tell us a little bit more about the experience of recording Andrew WK. What was that story for
Okay,
you?
this is a story. So in a world. No. So I'm at South by Southwest with my team, Bay Area Tone. I didn't own the company or anything, but we're all there. And we had a giant series. This was all analog mobile recording, by the way. This was done right before all the digital, you could do 10 jillion channels over
So you got a
one
tape
Ethernet
machine
cable.
in a truck
Yeah, we got
or
a tape.
something.
Yeah, a series of Edison cylinders for redundancy. Right. So Andrew WK is it was the biggest indoor stage at South by that year. It was 2010. I think we had a large portion of Muse's light rig. It was just gigantic. And this old brewery off 6th. This was for Pure Volume. My friend Josh Rowe invited us to come and record. And my friend, I have to say, a big shout out to the front of house guy, James Duvall, who, man, if you need to be in a foxhole, be in a foxhole, James Duvall. I'm telling you. Great guy. Just does not crack under pressure. So what did crack under pressure was the stage. Right before Andrew WK goes on, this is 2 a.m. or something, Gym Class Heroes was on, and they invite everybody up onto the stage, and they make them all jump, and then we just heard this giant cracking sound.
God,
and the
that's
back
scary.
of the stage, it was an A-frame stage, and the back of the stage just fell about 1.5 feet.
Wow.
So, okay, fire
Thank God
marshal.
it was only 1.5 feet.
Yeah, right. And there's drum kits on the stage. There's everything, all our microphones and everything. We were recording live with Royer 121s, which was, when you think about it, kind of idiotic, but also kind of awesome.
Right.
So, okay, fire marshal gets everybody out. The stage is collapsed. Get out of here, get out of here, get out of here. And so we had a little meeting in the dark of night. What are we going to do? Because we have another artist coming on. Okay, is it some indie band, some whatever? He goes, no, it's Andrew WK, who was huge at the time.
Yeah.
And famously chaotic and, party down. And we're like, that's the last name I wanted to hear. So with James directing and with my team, including my sister Emily was there, we reset all the power, all front of house, and all the recording gear in about an hour. And we set up the drum kit on the front edge of the stage so that the kick drum legs were on the part of the beam of the stage that was still intact. Everybody else is on the floor. PA is now on the floor in front. It was a Herculean effort. And when James turned it all on and I turned on the recording stuff in the truck, it all came on the first time. It was like, yeah, okay, because it had to come on the first time. We were so proud of everybody. And so there was one band before Andrew WK, and it all worked, and it went fine. And then Andrew gets up. And I had been working that whole week, just stressed. I mean, I wear stress well, but it was still wearing me, and especially after that experience. And it's 5 a.m. at that point. So I'm back in the truck recording, and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking, okay, get to do this.
And are you guys in San Francisco or New York for this?
We were in San Francisco, and this was in Austin.
But in the video, he's singing a song about New York.
Yeah. This song is about New York City.
Right.
And so I'm back in the truck, and I'm thinking, we just complete this, and I get to go home. And Andrew starts in, and it's all working. Thank goodness. I'm proud of everybody. I'm going to hit, once it's over, I'm going to hit stop, and I'm going to crash. James frantically runs out the back of the venue to the truck, looks at me and goes, man, there's people on stage messing with the mics. You got to come out here now. And I didn't. And I ran out there. I forgot my earplugs.
Oh, boy.
I ran out there in an absolute blind panic because I didn't own those microphones, but I was the caretaker of them. I run out there and I jump on stage next to the drum kit. Andrew's in front of me. He's on and I hide behind one of the, Orange was sponsoring that year. And I hid behind one of the half stacks. And it was 2010, so I was wearing a fedora for some reason because everybody was. But I'm back there and I look at James and I mouth to him over the music. I was like, there's nobody on stage. And he yells back, I know. I just wanted you to have some fun for once. So I'm hiding behind Andrew WK's half stack, and
with no earplugs,
with no earplugs, like 2 feet from the drummer. And Andrew keeps shotgunning the free Bud Lights that they had been giving out and throwing them, and they keep bouncing off my head.
That's hilarious.
And at one point we had,
Are you the one who gave him a bloody nose for that album cover?
No, but I'll apparently that was him. But to make a long story short, although I'm having fun telling it, so just deal. But this is memory lane for me, and I'm old. So I'm on stage, and he's, the beer cans bouncing off my head. And then that was the week that Taco Bell, they had a truck parked next to our recording truck in the back, and they were premiering the Doritos Loco Taco, or whatever it was. The taco made out of a Dorito.
No, but I believe you.
Yeah. So they had been handing those out, and everybody had 3 tacos and, 2 bean burritos in their hand and 4 cans of free Bud Light. And then I'm on stage behind him, and Andrew says, "This next song is about getting wet. It's called I Get Wet. So if you've got anything in your hands, throw it." And I look up, and there is it's like the movie 300 with the arrows.
Yeah.
Where Leonidas is like, "Then we will fight in the shade." I look up, and there are thousands of burritos and tacos and cans of Bud Light being thrown
coming
at
towards
me.
you.
And I just duck, and I had to wipe it off myself later. It was hilarious. So
those Royer 121s too.
Yeah, they were out of sight, thankfully. But yeah, it was crazy. We had to have one of the interns clean all the stuff later, and it was
wasn't that a Animal House? Food
yeah,
fight.
Totally. So for the last song, the stage starts collapsing more. And the drummer starts sliding back. Well, the drummer's rig, the tracks rig, was sliding backwards. So he's playing, and he motions to me with his neck like, "Come on over here," in the middle of a song. So I see the track rig sliding. So I go from behind the half stack, wrap myself around the track rig to keep it from sliding backwards. And my ear was about 3 inches from the snare drum for that last song. And so I actually have lost some hearing in my left ear because of that experience.
Oh, boy. It's tough. There's so many opportunities to blow up our ears and everything, whether it's studio, whether it's playing music, whether it's live shows. And it's just a good reminder to us that we have to be, we just have to be like, it's like the preparation thing. Like, I wish I had learned in my teens to carry foam earplugs with me and put them in all the time. I'm sure I damaged my hearing on a certain level at that point.
I mean, I have a great story. I don't know what you...
Yeah, mine was just like whatever, I was playing my fiddle through a, 115 Music Man, and it sounded like getting your teeth drilled at the dentist. That's how it was described to me.
Yeah.
So like the loudest, shittiest sounding, live music situations probably was
that 2.5 going right to the dome.
Yeah, finishing the rock show with my buddy after a night of drinking and thinking it was funny that my ears were ringing after the show, or I can't remember if they were ringing the next morning. Maybe that happened, but that's like if you're young enough to be able to still avoid that, rock stars, it's not funny. It might sound funny, but the thing about your ears and your hearing is that shit doesn't necessarily come back.
Nope.
When each time you do it, it's like you've just chipped off a little bit of forever.
Yeah.
So you gotta treat it that way. And, it doesn't mean you have to be like super anal. And, it's always somebody has a story about like, "Oh, that dude, he wears earplugs on the airplane. He's so anal." And it's like, now I do actually wear earplugs on the airplane.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I found out that my AirPods do better on the airplane than foam earplugs do. They actually knock out more sound.
That's crazy.
I was impressed about that. I think it's just because of the resonant frequencies.
With AirPods Pro, you can hear silence in 7.1.2.
There you go. Exactly.
But I want to say one thing about Andrew WK, because after all that experience, and it went off without a hitch, and I'll never forget that night ever. I bumped into him a couple of years later at a different South by. He's walking down the street, and I told him this story. And I said, "Man, you were shotgunning beers and they're bouncing off my head. And then all these burritos, I get caked in burritos like I was on Double Dare in the 80s and all of this." And he's such a sweetheart. He looked at me and he goes, "Man, I am so sorry." And I said, don't apologize. It was one of the greatest nights of my life. And he instantly goes, party! It was fantastic.
That's awesome. I love it. 1,000 burritos and beer cans were flying at me like the arrows in 300. Is that what it was?
Are you writing that down?
Yeah.
Can you write that down in calligraphy, please? I think it would look a lot better.
I already did.
Awesome.
How could you tell? Doug Serrett.
Oh,
somebody
man.
you work with. And you were talking about, you were mentioning Cuba as well. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. Doug has a relationship with some people in Cuba and over the years that he's developed, and he brought me along to assist on some things. And just, man, it's beautiful. It's complicated, but it's beautiful. And these wonderful people, music, it's just everywhere. I've never been to Vienna, but I hear that if you go, that you just hear music everywhere. Like it's in the water, it's in the air. That's gotta be true of Havana, you know? And we recorded the first time I was down there learning how to operate Pro Tools in Spanish with different key commands and all that stuff.
That's intense.
It was intense, you know. We had a blast just recording these two Cuban percussionists. I don't know their last names, but Jesus and Juan. And we went through this huge list of rhythms that they all grew up with and yes, studied. Timba, charanga, mambo, son, songa, afro jazz, you know, all this great stuff. And they are, I mean, the precision that they played with was only exceeded by the feel and love that they put into every note. It was one of these perfect meetings of skill and passion that is the definition of virtuosity. And just hearing it go down was spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. It's something I'll never forget. And then, you know, there have been other interactions, and I've been back, and I'm going back again. I believe I want to. Just being around that music and that music and those people is absolutely infectious. It's wonderful, beautiful, and it's so pure. You know, if you ask an artist in America, why are you in music? At some point, hopefully later rather than sooner, you're going to hear, well, I want to be a success. I want to do this as a career. I want to quit my day job. I want this. I want that.
You should just be girls.
Yeah, we can. Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you're asking a guy, for example.
That's true. That is objectively true that I have heard that. Although it's been a while. But if you ask, you know, I would ask some of my new Cuban friends and say, why do you do this? It's fun. I want to make music with my friends.
Yeah.
And same thing, I'd spent some time,
time
in Australia, the same thing. Like their music, they don't have a music business that has the bloat that ours does. And so it's like, yeah, I play music with my friends because I like it and it's fun. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a great reason to do it. Again, that's why I wanted to do it. I didn't know anything about success in the music business. I didn't actually think it was I never even considered it a career. I just really like playing music with my buddies and being in a band. And then when I came to Nashville, I was so green. I didn't even know Nashville was actually really a big deal as a music city. You know, I mean, I guess I kind of did, sort of, but I never paid attention to country. Just had a good school for recording.
Likewise.
But what about Buena Vista Social Club? Is that an artist that you were familiar with as you went down to Cuba?
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's definitely it. And I don't know if the rock stars have heard or seen Buena Vista Social Club. It was a kind of documenting some Cuban artists at the end of their lives / careers. These people were in their 90s. Ry Cooder decided to go down. The famous Ry Cooder decided to go down and bring a bunch of tape machines. With his son.
His son was engineering.
Yeah, Joaquin, yep. And went down, brought a bunch of tape machines, and just went to EGREM, which is one of the government-owned studios in Cuba, in Havana, and recorded these amazing, actually, I don't know if it was EGREM. It might have been the other one. I think it was EGREM. But
it was definitely like a classic-sounding studio, beautiful room, space, and everything.
Yeah. And EGREM was I think it's the biggest. It was also a record label. Anyway, went down there and recorded these Cuban singers and instrumentalists, and it is a magical document of people making music together that they all love in one room, and then they end up touring with it. And there's a documentary that
it says it was recorded. The internet says it was recorded at Vintage Egrem Studio.
Egrem, yeah.
And it says, as one critic put it, Buena Vista has become, quote, the world music's equivalent of the dark side of the moon, quote. Oh, great quote. Right?
100%. I've never heard that. That is, yeah, absolutely. And Wim Wenders made a documentary about it that you can see. This music was inescapable in the late 90s. Everybody was hearing it. It, won every award in the book, as it well should. And everybody knew what it was. I feel like a lot of people haven't talked about it in a long time. But if you're sick of it all, and you're sick of the money, and you're sick of the trying to get ahead and climb the ladder and all the rest of it, then man, watch Buena Vista Social Club, because it is one of the purest documents of the love of music that you'll ever see.
Yeah, great. I love it. Do you feel like all the time that you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all of your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of our students, David. Quote, absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mixing process I've ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session. Close quote. Look, I'm so confident that the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass will take your mixes to the next level that if you can't get a killer mix within 30 days, I'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. So if you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and start now by checking out the free preview of the Ultimate Snare Mixing Trick, and I'll save a seat for you at the front row table at the Grammys. And then some of those musicians, maybe it was a mix of older musicians and some younger ones or something. Mm-hmm. But I think various of that group went off to have, different careers, and probably already did. But yeah, I think there's a whole path of discovery of the musicians that were on that too.
Yes, it's grown since then. In some ways, a lot of those musicians are still out. The older ones have, passed on.
Yeah.
But
Ace Monroe, another band that you've worked with. Bad News, great rock guitar tones, great band. Talk about recording a rock band. What are some go-to things that have worked for you? Those recordings also have very hard-hitting rock drums.
Oh, man.
So talk a little bit about that. I mean, things you've learned about miking up a rock guitar amp and miking up a drum kit to get, maybe there's tricks that happen later in the mix too. I don't know, but anything that would help us.
Man, that record was played. That record is real, and we did a zillion takes until we got the one. And if we needed to replace some things, great. But a lot of those drums were tracked to tape. But I don't think tape is the magic ingredient. The magic ingredient is Jonathan Tatulis, who is... he hits like a train. I had to get a new, one of those, what a kick block is, something to put in front of the kick drum.
Right. Keep it from sliding.
Yeah. Cause my old one, he went right through it. And nobody had ever done this. I've been making records for almost 25 years. Nobody had ever done that. The kick drum's flying across the room. Right. Even with something in front of it. So I had to put more stuff in front of it. And the kick block, which you can get at Sweetwater, works. Barely for him, but boy.
What is the kick block?
It's just a little foam rubber thing with Velcro on it that Velcros to
the rug,
drum rug. Yeah. And it kind of, it's soft enough foam that the lugs, the top of the tension rods on the bottom of the bass drum will push into it and kind of make an indentation that kind of locks them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll keep it from moving across the room. But man, barely anything could stop that guy's right foot. So he's hitting, if you want hard hitting drums, hit the drums hard.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And be ready to tune the snare drum a lot.
Yeah.
And pick the right snare drum.
That was something I remember learning working with Steve Albini up at Electrical, is he would talk about needing to go out and just keep tweaking the snare drum to bring it back up to tune because of the hitting.
Mm-hmm.
And he pointed out that under right below the hitting hand, if it's your left hand or righty drummer, is that lug is the place where you're most likely going to have to keep bringing it back up again. And it is something it's a very tricky thing to do, because if you're in between takes and you want to have these usable, comparable drum takes, you also don't want to change the tuning of the drum too much.
Correct.
And so it becomes very challenging to do that accurately and make sure that you didn't, over pitch up the drums compared to where it was.
So easy to do.
And notice that it drifted and went lower in pitch and stuff like that.
And then if you're saying, well, the bridge was better on take 2, let's comp that in. And now the snare drum goes dong, 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 dong,
Yeah. Have you learned any good tricks for doing that? Do you just kind of do it by ear, or you just sort of learn to carefully only tweak the snare up just so much? Or is it just a gut feeling of where the snare should be when it's correctly tuned?
It's a gut feeling. I'm very grateful to, again, Matt Goldman for just kind of teaching me how to tune drums. A guy named Paul Montanari, who's an old drum maker in Atlanta. Well, he's been doing it a long time. And so I kind of know a lot about drum tuning and drum dampening and drum teching and all the rest of it. So with Jonathan, when that one lug under his left hand if that tension rod had a cartoon bubble coming out of it, it would be screaming help, but I use a snare drum with him for the song. We're switching out. I got a lot of snare drums, switching them out. And I sort of know what that snare drum sounds best at, where that tuning is. I'm not trying to get a bunch of different sounds out of one drum. I'm going, okay, no, this bell, this is the Gretsch bell brass. It sounds good here. Well, okay, that drum sounds good anywhere. But a different drum, the bell brasses are crazy, but a different drum, it sounds good in this range. I know what that range is. I know how to put my hand on the side of the shell and feel it resonate. So now I'm hearing it, and now I'm feeling it. I've got 2 senses involved. I know where that drum is, and therefore it's easy to get back to that place, So I don't jack the whole thing up and tune it up a quarter turn and it's higher anymore. I kind of know where home base is.
That's awesome. What if I was to just ask you a basic question for the rock stars? If we think the snare needs new heads on it and needs to be tuned, what would you say if you were going to give some basic, here's how to put the heads on the snare and make sure it's ready for recording?
If you've decided you need new heads, first of all, the way to determine that is, because I don't like paying for new heads if I don't have to. Right. Certainly, they're not getting any cheaper. A snare head is dead when it won't resonate low. When you have to tune it up, way up sometimes, to get it to sound 3-dimensional, that's when you know that head is shot. And in this era of low-tuned drums, that happens a lot. So you need fresh heads, not all the time.
Are we in an era of low-tuned drums?
I'm trying to get out of it, brah.
You're trying to bring back 311?
I don't know about
the piccolo.
Okay, sidebar. Man, I put on 311. I was like, I make fun of 311 all the time. I put on 311 and all mixed up and all the rest of it. If I ever hear Amber is the Color of Your Energy again, it'll be too soon because they just played the crap out of that on the radio. But I listened to the Blue album and I was like, okay, I don't like this genre. I don't like this, approach, but the energy is amazing. It's amazing. It's like that people, you can make fun of the Spin Doctors all you want. But I will defend the Spin Doctors' first record, Pocket Full of Kryptonite, till the day I die, except for the song the guitar player sings, which is terrible. But the rest of it is a band in a room getting down. And Aaron Comes beating the snot out of that 5x14 Brady jar apply snare on Two Princes. And man, That is the spirit. You listen to that and it blows the back of your head off.
That's awesome.
It's crazy. So all right. Anyway, so yeah,
I like all the snare name dropping you can pull out of a hat.
Oh gosh, it's a problem. It is a problem.
So keep giving.
Yeah,
You're talking to your intern. Here's how you get a snare started. You're talking to somebody who's like trying to do a first rock session.
Yeah. So snare drum, they're round.
That
first
helps.
of all, basics. So you loosen the lugs, you take the other head, you throw it away. If you're like me, you try to bounce it off the floor like a Frisbee. Get a new head, put it on the drum. Make sure, if somebody's listening to this who's going to intern for me, make sure the logo is pointing at 12 o'clock and the throw off is on the left side at 9 o'clock.
Throw off is the little lever that brings the snares on and off when you're playing it, right?
Correct. Don't put the logos all strange and skewed and everything like that. It needs to look neat as a pin. People.
And the reason the lever is, you said 9 o'clock?
I put it at 9 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay. The reason so that would put it on the left-hand side of the drum.
Yeah.
A reason for that is because the drum's very likely going to be played by a righty drummer.
Very likely. I've worked with some lefties.
The logo looks good at the top, but the throw-off thing means that if a drummer was playing a beat, they can keep the hi-hat going with their right hand. But with the left hand that's about to hit the snare beats, they can reach down, flip the lever, and still catch that backbeat on the snare, right?
Right. And there's more leg-wise, that's your hi-hat leg assuming a right-handed drummer. The left leg is not moving nearly as much as the right leg with the kick drum. And also the left leg, if you look at drummers, the left leg is a little more open. It's a little more out to the side, a little wider. Yeah. And the kick drum's kind of right there. So you don't want that lever throw off bumping against the kick drum.
Right.
That's very important. So anyway, you got the head on, logos at 12 o'clock, please. And
just very briefly, the bottom head of a snare drum is usually a clear, thin one.
A bottom head is a snare side. Yeah. Remo SA, snare side ambassador, Evans 300. It's going to be a very thin single ply, and
it never gets hit.
It never gets hit unless you're tuning it. We'll get there. I guess we'll get there in a second.
If I let you.
That's actually I forgot. All right. Good night, everybody. So you got the top head on. You are in a star pattern, so you're not going around the top of the drum like a clock dial with the drum key. You're doing it like a star pattern, so lugs across from one another.
That means tighten the lug, go across, tighten the other one.
Yeah.
Move up one, tighten that, go across from that.
1 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
To even it out, it's like you're rolling. The tension of the drum head is like you're rolling out pizza dough, and you don't want a big lump in one area, or it's not a very good pizza.
Yeah, you're not going to tighten the whole left side of the drum head and then go over and tighten the whole right side.
Yeah, that's a great way to bend the rim. It's certainly a great way to destroy the tension of the head, so you need a new one instantly. And
you don't tighten it all the way at first. You tighten it
finger
a bit.
tight.
Finger tight.
Yeah.
Go all the way around and then start.
The way I do it, finger tight, and I'm not really checking tuning at that point, and then immediately I'll tune it up all the way, particularly if it's a Remo head. I'll tune it up all the way, and then I will. Do you want the full enchilada on this, Lidge?
Sure. Yeah, we'll close out on this this drum tuning tip.
Oh yeah. Take it to the bathroom. Get out a hairdryer. Run the hairdryer on high heat around the edge of the snare drum at the top with the drum head properly seated and all the way up tuned. And you'll hear some cracking as the glue settles.
Wow.
And then bring it down to floppy again, and now tune it up in a star pattern, 1 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, all that. And bring it up. So, and then the last step is put a wallet or something like that, your phone in a case or something like that would work. Put it in the middle of the drum, so you have damped the fundamental of the drum. And now tap about an inch in front of every lug in a star pattern going around. Make sure all the lugs are even with one another. And now your drum head, the top head, is in tune.
This podcast is proud to present Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you're ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I master my own records using nothing but plugins. Plus, I take you into a world-class mastering studio, Sterling Sound, to meet with Ryan Smith and hear how he professionally mastered my record, Skadoosh, for release to streaming platforms. That's the music you hear on this podcast, Rockstars. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free mixing course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins and Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads for you to practice mixing and even upload to your website if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/academy to get started now. So now when you say tap an inch in front of each lug, you're listening to the sound that it makes.
Yes.
And if you tap one and it's like ping, but the other one across from it is ping, a little lower.
Yeah.
Then you might tighten that one to bring it up to ping.
Yeah, you want everybody agreement, everybody making the same sound. And then you go to the bottom head and put that on, I'll leave the rock stars to figure out how to get the snares on and off, but put the bottom head on. I like to loosen the snare wires and put a stick under the snare wires that rests on the rim so that the snare head can ring freely while I'm tuning it. And just you bring it up pretty tight. I don't go crazy trying to match it to a pitch. But
I think I was thinking about this backwards. So the first head we talked about is the one you're hitting.
Batter
now
head.
You're talking about the bottom where the snares are. So
So
when I said the clear, I was thinking of the bottom, and I probably missaid that.
Top is probably going to be a coated, although not always. The bottom one, get it up pretty tight, not so you can bounce a quarter off of it, but pretty tight so that you're getting some resonance off of it. And then here's a little secret sauce. The 4 lugs on opposite sides of the snare drum, of the snares themselves, loosen those lugs just a little bit versus the other ones. So these won't match the other lugs that are around the drum on the bottom. This is only on the bottom. Loosen those 2 lugs on either side of the snares, and the snares won't ring as much when you hit your rack tom.
Wow. So say that again. So the concern is when you hit the toms, sometimes the snare just sings along.
Yeah, you're getting
and
a little
resonates, and you go doing that. So you're saying you tighten up the bottom head lugs, and then you just choose 2 of them across from each other and loosen them?
Not just choose 2 of them. A snare drum has little indentations carved out on the bottom of it where the snare wires rest, and those are called the snare beds. And if take a drum, take the bottom head off, put it on a flat table, a glass table, and you'll see some light coming through where the snares are supposed to rest. It's a little carve out there. It's very subtle, hard to see. And it varies depending on what drum you have or who made it. The width can vary quite a bit. But right where those snare beds are, there's 2 lugs on either side of the snare bed, and there's 2 lugs on the other side. Loosen those just a touch, and you should get less what's called sympathetic vibrations from the snare when you hit other drums.
Right, because that drum head stretching across the drum from, in line with the snares themselves is not so resonant in tune that it's going to sing against the snare. So in other words, it's like when you hit it, you'll get the snare action, but then the rest of the time with the toms, it will just it'll be a little bit deader, right where the snares are touching the head or something like that.
That super thin head wants to resonate, and it's looking for any opportunity you can give it, and the rack tom's right there.
Yeah.
So the less, if you can't dial it out all the way, it's fine, but do what you can.
That's a great tip. And the other one that I remember learning about the snares related to the, like what you said with the dryer, and you're trying to break some of that glue that glues the snare to the hoop, or it glues the head to the hoop that it comes with.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there you go.
When it's loose and you put on the snare, you can sort of ball your fist and put it in and just kind of push on the snare
Oh, I forgot to
head a
say
little
that.
bit, right?
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah. When
helps
it's
stretch and crack out the
I'll stand on them.
glue, right?
I'll put them on the ground and stand on them with it all the way up and
So
walk in a
that's a
circle.
little bit like, be careful if you stand on them, rock stars. You don't want to break the new head.
I-
It's like learning how to stretch out the guitar strings and being really bold, and then you do it on the E, and you're like, God, I just broke the one.
I have never. I'll do it with kick drums, and I am. Let's just say most of the rock stars are going to be smaller than me. You know, I'm 6'4", 250 when I'm in shape, and I'll stand on it and dig my heels into the center of the drum with my toes on the rim and spin us in a circle and press down and put as much weight as I can on the center of that drum.
Wow, but not trying to put a dimple
one.
or a dent in the head.
No.
Just trying to put pressure on it.
Yeah.
To stretch out.
And the reason you do that is that it gets out all the weird resonances. You want to get out all the strange things that a brand new head has brought to the table. Which can vary, by the way, particularly with Remo. It can be a little all over the place. You want to get rid of all of that. And you want to make as even a playing field as you can. Going back to the pizza dough analogy, you got to roll and roll and roll and roll and toss and toss and toss and toss and toss until it's even. That's where you want it.
That's great. And I think a lot of us might be guitar players, so we might be familiar with the idea that you put new strings on a guitar and it's hard to tune, and then you play it and it's out of tune again. And then hopefully you learn that you need to stretch the strings when you put them on. And one of the ways is I'll just grab with my pinky, underneath the string, and my fingers are under the string and my thumb is on top. And I sort of do this forward roll where I'm pulling up on the string and pushing down at the same time with my fingers and thumb. And go up and down the string like that. And I learned that from a guitar tech on the road. And it pre-stretches the strings so that when you play them, they don't continue to stretch out and go out of tune on you. Same concept with the drums,
Same concept. Yeah, and with guitar strings, if you pull too hard, you break it and learn an important lesson.
Well, let me jump to this question. So that was great. We're going to take this is a hypothetical question. We get to take the Wayback Studio machine, and you go back in time and you find young Andy, or maybe Andrew. I don't know.
Ooh, that's perceptive. It was, I think my mom and dad are still kind of a little sore at me for going with Andy, but it was back then.
Listen, young Andrew, here's the single most important thing you need to know to become a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice do you want to go back and give yourself if you could?
First of all, I actually wrote this down because I wanted to put some thought into it. First of all, if you build it, they will come is nonsense. Absolute nonsense. You can build whatever you want, but you got to go out and drag people to it.
Sorry, Kevin Costner.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, James Earl Jones. But if you build your studio, you can have the greatest thing in the world, and you might be sitting there in the middle of all this wonderful gear, and you might have done what I did, which is run up way too much credit card debt that took you 10 years to pay off. And you could be wondering, well, why in the hell are people coming? This is beautiful. Look at all the stuff I got. You need to be focusing on going where the music is. That is if you build it, they will come is crap, and go where the music is. Be a part of the scene. That's why my first studio, Mayday, which it was founded on May 1st, so I call it Mayday, but the logo was a plane going down in flames, which turned out to be way too predictive. Because that's exactly what happened. I sat on my butt and I was full of pride, and I thought, I'm a genius and everybody already knows it, and they're going to come in here any minute now. And that's crap.
That's interesting. If you build it, they will come. The proper way is, why don't you build it where they're already hanging out?
Go where the music is.
Awesome. Dude, well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, man. Thank you so much for joining us on Recording Studio Rockstars. I don't know why it took us so long, but we finally did it. And thank you so much for your support for Saving Home Studios in Music City, man.
Thank you. And hey, Rockstars, anybody in Nashville, I know people listen to this. It is my mission in life to make sure that Lid Shaw never pays for a drink again, okay? I'm serious. If I find you, I will call you on this.
Well, maybe we'll go get some lunch next.
Hey,
go get a burrito.
My treat.
I'll take you up on it, dude. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
We'll let the rock stars know, where can they find you online? Where should they go? What if they're ready to come make their next record with you and they want their drums all tuned up, right?
Oh, yeah, drums. Yeah, a lot of drums. 5 kits, 30 snares, 30 guitars. It's crazy. Come find me at Andy Freeman AF on Instagram. And that's pretty much it. You know,
Okay,
you can also reach me at, I'm old school. So eardrums@me.com. That email will never change.
Right on. Well, we may, if you give that to me, we'll make sure we got that in the show notes too, or just pause and write it down. Right?
Yeah. Anybody can email me, ask me questions. Yeah. You can tell I like talking. So let's go.
Awesome, dude. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Rockstars. Thank you for listening. And Andy, we'll see you around the studio, dude.
See you around, Lich.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this episode possible: Grace Design, Atom Audio, Native Instruments, and Isotope. And remember, at isotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plugin purchase. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes, because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars: Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.